Alhamdulillah wa sallallahu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Good evening. I am Amber Khan, chair of IMANA Education. IMANA Education is back with another webinar this May. And in recognition of May 31st being World No Tobacco Day, IMANA has partnered up with ISNA tonight to talk about raising awareness on tobacco use. The Muslim community is definitely not immune to the use of tobacco as well as nicotine products, including cigarettes, vaping, and hookah. And Muslim youth are particularly vulnerable. There was a study done by the Family and Youth Institute, and it found that among US Muslim college students, 44% admit to smoking hookah and 51% to using tobacco products. In addition, 26% believe that hookah is prohibited in Islam, and 29% believe cigarettes is prohibited in Islam. Furthermore, students who rated religious beliefs as very important and believed that tobacco was prohibited in Islam also smoked hookah. Definitely the effects of both tobacco and nicotine products, aside from the Islamic rulings, along with the policy rulings surrounding them, is something that we lack very much in understanding in our community. So tonight, IMANA and ISNA have put together a panel that will discuss the religious, health, and policy changes centered around tobacco and nicotine products. To explain a little bit more about this initiative, I would like to pass it over to Imam Saffet, Catovic. Imam Saffet is head of the Islamic Society of North America, ISNA office, for Interfaith and Community Alliances and Government Relations in Washington, D.C. He is the Imam and Muslim chaplain at Drew University, where he received his MA in Religion and Society. He is also a board member of the Muslim Alliance in North America. He is an advisory group for the Yale Forum on Religion and Ecology and a longtime U.S. Muslim community organizer and activist and environmental leader. He is the chair of the Parliament of the World Religions Climate Action Task Force, and he serves on the Parliament Board of Trustees. So without further ado, I would like to pass it over to Imam Saffet, who will talk a little bit more about this initiative before I then introduce our first speaker.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amber. It's wonderful to be with all of you this evening. We were just commenting before we got on about the sweltering heat. You know, there's a verse in the Quran that speaks about climate changes being real and being caused as a result of the actions of human beings. We know a big part of climate change has to do with pollution of the air, and it has to do with the destruction of the lungs of the earth, the deforestation and part of what we're going to be doing tonight, and our wonderful group of panelists and experts from various traditions and working in various ways, is to address the issue of smoke that is produced literally by the hands of human beings and then inhaled into the lungs and causing all sorts of pain, suffering, not only to the individuals who engage in this, I would call it a filthy practice, but also to those who are around them and surround them. So I was trying to think of a verse in the Holy Quran to sort of set the tone. As Muslims, we begin with a verse from the Holy Quran, and I came across this verse in Surah Al-Nisa, which is the chapter on women, or entitled Women, and it is chapter 4 of the Holy Quran. And the verse reads in part, مَا أَصَابَكَ مِنْ حَسَنَةٍ فَمِنَ اللَّهِ وَمَا أَصَابَكَ مِنْ سَيِّئَةٍ فَمِنْ نَفْسِكَ وَأَرْسَلْنَاكَ لِلنَّاسِ رَسُولًا وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ شَهِيدًا. Whatsoever befalls you of goodness is from God, and whatsoever befalls you of evil comes from your own selves. We have sent you, O Prophet, as a messenger, as a warner, and a bringer of glad tidings as well to all people, and God is sufficient as a witness. Literally, it's in our hands, what we do to ourselves and what we do to others. And this Quranic verse speaks to that. Health, well-being has been a gift in the Quranic language, a ni'mah, a blessing from God, but it is also simultaneously referred to in the Quranic language as an IMANA, which means a trust, given by the originator of the trust, God. Health and well-being is the circumstances and situation in which God placed us in the wombs of our mothers as souls, and then upon birth into the world. What we do with that life determines not only our future in this world, but the future to come. And definitely our lives which are interconnected with one another, with the natural world, there is a cause and effect relationship in the cosmos. As we cause disruption upon the earth, and as we cause disruption within the human being, God connects the idea of seeing the verses in the heavens and seeing the verses or the signs of God within our own selves. As we disrupt, destroy, damage, harm the outer world, or that which is the visible world around us, the signs in the natural world, and as a result of that, the natural world is diminished, the functioning of the ecosystems is limited or seriously damaged, and maybe even destroyed. Similarly, as we destroy the signs of God within ourselves and violate and dishonor the caring for and the honoring of that trust, we find ourselves in harm's way. So I'm hopeful tonight we'll have a chance to learn from one another, learn about the different areas of the harms that this type of behavior, and it is a behavior, it is a learned behavior, and it can be unlearned, cause to ourselves and to those around us, our loved ones, our near and dear ones, as well as possible ways in which we can work together in areas of advocacy and policy. ISNA is happy to have partnered over the years, especially more recently with tobacco-free kids, and we're wonderfully anticipating future cooperation going forward. And we're very thankful to our partners from the medical expertise. You know, the mantra from the previous couple of years had been, since COVID, trust the scientists, trust the medical experts. Well, we're very much interested to listen to what the medical experts and the scientists have to tell us, because yes, we do trust in them. And so looking forward to kicking this off and to learning from all of you. Thank you for allowing me to share.
Thank you so much, Imam Saffet, and for that beautiful reminder. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our panelists. First up, we have our medical perspective on tobacco and nicotine products. And we have tonight Dr. Azeem Elahi. Before I pass it over to you, Dr. Elahi, I would like to say a few words. Dr. Elahi is a pulmonary and critical care physician in practice in Charlotte, North Carolina. His particular areas of expertise include smoking-related lung diseases, such as chronic obstructive lung disease, emphysema, interstitial lung disease, and lung cancer. Thank you so much, Dr. Elahi, for taking time out of your busy schedule to share your expertise with us. Dr. Elahi is working in the ICU tonight on call, so thank you so much for sharing the time, whatever time that you have for us this evening.
Great, thank you for that introduction. Thanks for including the disclaimer there as well, because if I do jump up and leave, there will be some emergency to respond to. But what I've been tasked with today is to review health effects of tobacco and nicotine products. And I think it's such a worthwhile discussion for sort of the community at large, not only now, but sort of forever since the existence of these products. Now, the content from this discussion really arises from scouring through data from U.S. Food and Drug Administration, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and then a large bulk from the American Lung Association, which is a very useful organization and website to review for anything pertaining to lungs. Now, on that sort of background, I think it's important for us to understand what tobacco products are, because it has evolved dramatically, even in the time of my own existence. So tobacco products, as you can see on the slides here, vary quite diversely. Now, that includes cigarettes, that includes cigars, that includes pipe tobacco, there's chewing tobacco, there's hookah, as mentioned. All of these products can be smoked, heated, chewed, absorbed, dissolved, inhaled, ingested. There's so many different ways we as humans have figured out how to cannibalize this product and have it enter our bloodstream. Now, within that tobacco product is nicotine, which is highly addictive and it's toxic, and that's present within this tobacco plant. And it's colorless and it's odorless, and that's why it gets added with so many other chemicals. Towards the right side panel on this screen, you'll see electronic nicotine delivery systems. These are acronated as ENDS. They allow users to inhale an aerosol containing nicotine or other substances, and they're tobacco products, just like cigarettes are. And these, what you can see on the picture there are vapes, vape pens, pods, hookah pens, electronic cigarettes, and e-pipes. And it's important for us to understand what is out there, what's available, especially as it pertains to our youth today. Now, this is a figure I pasted just to show the US smoking rate over the past 50 to 70 years here. And if you look at the highlighted date, 1954, it represents 45% of Americans who admitted to smoking a cigarette in the past week. And overall, what you see on this is a downtrending line that takes us from 45% in the 1950s down to 16% over the past 5 years or so. Now, what that shows is a nice steady decline. And if you analyze this data a little bit closer, you'll find that the higher incidence of smoking is in age groups of 25 to 44 and in 45 to 64-year-olds. And these groups represent about 15% of smokers in their respective age cohorts. Now, it is lowest among those aged 18 to 24. This is somewhat outdated. We've got, 4 years since this last updated bar on here. So if we look at some more recent data comparisons, you'll see that that downtrend has steadily declined even further down to about 12%, the most recent data I saw from 2020. This is important for us to review because when you look at this bar graph, this represents percentage of middle and high school students who currently use e-cigarettes and any tobacco product. So what you see in the dark solid line at the top in black is any tobacco product used in high school. And then you have the wide dashed line in black representing e-cigarettes in this high school group. And then in the blue lines, you see any tobacco group in the short dashed lines and e-cigarettes in the middle school group in the wider dashed lines. When you look at this figure, what you can see very clearly is this downward trend from 2011 up to about 2013. You see a downtrend in any tobacco product use in the high school group. And you see a downtrend in the any tobacco product in the middle school group. And then there's this incline in all of these lines here. E-cigarettes entered the US market in 2007. And by 2014, e-cigarettes were the most commonly used tobacco products among US youth. It's alarming. Now, if we go even further into this bar graph, what you'll see is this the steep line moving upward in both the high school cohort and the middle school cohort. And if we go to 2017, you see how much more drastically these lines are going upward, meaning more percentage of students in both the middle school and the high school groups are using e-cigarettes. Now, it's postulated, and it very appropriately so, that this rise in e-cigarette use during this 2017 to 2018 era is because of the popularity of e-cigarettes shaped like a USB flash drive, such as the Juul device. These products can be used discreetly. They have a high nicotine content because of the nicotine salt e-liquid that's used within them, and they come in flavors that appeal to youth. This bar graph is both alarming and important because 3 out of 10 teens who vape use this as a bridge to smoking cigarettes, to smoking cigars, to using hookah within the 6 months following. Now, the fact that smoking causes cancer, well, that's well known. I think any of us are well aware of this, and it's scientifically proven. We're all well aware of it. In fact, it's on the box labels these days. Everyone knows that nicotine is present in cigarettes, and this causes that addiction to smoking. But I think it's important for us to understand the chemical compounds that are in cigarette smoke. That number is estimated at over 7,300 chemical compounds within cigarette smoke. And if you look at this, 70 have confirmed carcinogenic activity, meaning these are cancer-causing compounds within the smoke of these cigarettes. If you look at the panel towards the right, there's 8 of these compounds listed here. Nicotine increases blood pressure, increases heart rate, increases blood sugar. Nitrosamines are known human carcinogens. They may cause reproductive damage. Benzene is a known human carcinogen, damages bone marrow, lowers red blood cell count, may harm reproductive organs. Aromatic amines, known human carcinogen, linked with bladder cancer. Acetaldehyde is a known animal carcinogen, probable human carcinogen, irritant to skin, eyes, respiratory tract. Butadiene, known human carcinogen, suspected human teratogen, meaning it can cause fetal growth abnormalities, irritant to eyes, skin, upper respiratory tract. I mean, I could keep reading this. Acrolein with heart disease, known DNA mutagen, polyaromatics, known human carcinogen, known DNA mutagen, affects reproductive capacity. These are worrisome features in cigarettes that we continue to consume for some reason. Now, e-cigarettes, all of these electronic devices, they've been marketed as the less caustic or less worrisome alternative to smoking. But it is without doubt that this is also a huge concern. It is not just water vapor that you see outward or that is being inhaled into the lungs. You see a variety of chemicals within this vapor. You see a variety of metals within this vapor. You see carcinogens found in the urine of vape users. And you have withdrawal symptoms when these users are no longer using the devices. What was in sort of popularity maybe 5 years ago when Juuls first came out was vape lung. And the medical term for that is bronchiolitis obliterans. And oftentimes these were patients who developed such dramatic lung disease that they were having to be listed on lung transplant lists. They needed oxygen supplementation just to survive. This figure is from the Journal of Physiology. It reviews the pulmonary and cardiac effects of e-cigarette aerosols, and it breaks it down into short-term and long-term effects. Now, on the pulmonary side with your lungs, in the short term, very immediately after inhalation, you see increased airflow resistance and you see increased airway reactivity. And then the long-term implications, emphysema, higher airway resistance, airway obstruction, airway inflammation. On the cardiac side, in the short term, you see this immediate effect on your heart rate, increase in blood pressure, and both in the short and long term, it increased aortic stiffness. Aorta is the main blood vessel that receives the blood from the heart as it's pumped out. And then this term here, increased atherosclerosis, which we'll talk about shortly. And so as we talk about these health implications, we'll start off with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which really represents a spectrum of lung diseases, including emphysema, chronic bronchitis, non-reversible asthma, even some forms of interstitial lung disease, including bronchiectasis. But this disease is characterized mainly by breathlessness, shortness of breath. And many people, as we age, seem to attribute this to normal part of aging. And it's worrisome to do so because early on in the stage of the disease, these symptoms may be mild and they may go masked. But COPD can develop over years, and this shortness of breath progresses rapidly. And when they emerge, the symptoms emerge, we're in later stages of the disease, and it becomes a lot more difficult to undo some of the damage that is done. Some of that damage includes the direct inhalation of harmful particles that get trapped into these alveoli in the lungs. So you have bronchioles, which carry air into the lung sacs. And as we have irritation to the bronchioles, as mucus globs form, it causes narrowing in these bronchioles, and it makes it that much more difficult to deliver air into these healthy alveolar sacs to exchange gas, breathe in the oxygen, and blow out the CO2. But additionally, it causes irreversible damage. So when you have these particles trapped in the alveoli, an inflammatory response is triggered. And that inflammation ends up dissolving these layers within these alveolar sacs. And so what you end up having are these large air cavities lined with carbon deposits, causing this emphysematous lung disease that we can see in the figure. Now, on the cardiovascular side, smoking is a major risk factor for heart disease. The chemicals you inhale when you smoke, it causes damage to your heart and the blood vessels, and they're more likely to cause atherosclerosis, which is this plaque formation within the blood vessels. Ultimately, what this plaque does is reduce the blood flow. And so when your heart is trying to compensate, when you're moving, when you're exercising, when you're exerting yourself, that plaque narrows this blood vessel and prevents adequate circulation. And circulation is important for getting oxygen to the organs that are needed. Now, in addition, it's also important to note that any amount of smoking, even occasional smoking, for example, 5 cigarettes, can cause this damage to the heart and the blood vessels. So you hear some people say, well, I only smoke a few cigarettes a day. Well, it's still causing harm. Smoking poses an even greater risk for some people who have other heart disease risks. So high cholesterol, high blood pressure, people who are overweight or obese, these people have higher risk of heart disease even more. Now, what you see on panel B here is peripheral lung disease, peripheral leg artery with atherosclerosis. So these are arteries that are trying to deliver a lot of this circulatory oxygen into organs that are needed, such as your head, your arms, your legs. And when there's these blockages within them, it's impairing that oxygen delivery. So what does this boil down to? Cigarette smoking is the leading cause of preventable death in the USA. It causes nearly 1 in 5 deaths. Those are reversible causes of death. They're preventable. Smoking causes about 90% of all lung cancer deaths. More women die from lung cancer each year than from breast cancer. What's unfortunate is even secondhand smoke exposure causes more than 7,000 deaths in non-smokers in the United States from lung cancer. It's alarming, just that exposure to secondhand smoke. Smoking causes about 80% of all deaths from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And in general, cigarette smoking increases risk of death from all causes in both men or women. In heart disease, it's about 2 to 4 times higher. In stroke, it's 2 to 4 times higher. In lung cancers, it's 25 times higher in a smoker versus a non-smoker. Now, we've known for years smoking causes lung cancers, but it's not just that. Smoking can cause cancer almost anywhere in your body, as you can see animated here. Smokeless tobacco, such as chewing tobacco, also causes cancer, including cancers of the esophagus, mouth and throat, and pancreas. So what can we do to help? I think, we've shared a fair bit of some of the consequences of these bad habits. Lung cancer screening is recommended by the U.S. Preventative Services Task Force for adults aged 55 to 80 who have at least a 20-pack year cigarette smoking history and currently smoke or have quit within 15 years. And what is involved is screening with a low-dose CT scan to detect lung cancers early rather than late. So if, God forbid, we're encountering a situation where we have exposure to some of this toxic product that is carcinogenic and we see early findings, we want to be able to find that early. What's worrisome, however, is 7 of 8 adults who meet screening criteria did not get the recommended screening. And so this is something when we talk about advocacy and we talk about education, it's really important in the public health initiatives to help with this. In addition to cigarette smoking counseling, in addition to smoking cessation counseling, we should help with increasing and recommending lung cancer screening. When you quit, and this is a wonderful image from Ohio Health about the smoking cessation timeline. And the question is wondering if it's too late to stop smoking. And the answer is it never is. When you look at the 12-hour carbon monoxide levels, they drop back to normal. When you look at the 2-week to 3-month interval, your risk of heart attack begins to drop and your lung function already begins to improve. Up to 9 months, your coughing and shortness of breath decrease. At the 1-year mark, your added risk of coronary disease is half that of a smoker, of you 1 year prior. At 5 years, your risk of stroke is reduced to that of a non-smoker. At 10 years, your risk of dying from lung cancer is about half that of a smoker. And at 15 years, your risk of coronary heart disease is the same as that of a non-smoker. So there is sort of light at the end of the tunnel here. When you look at the heart specifically, after 1 year, the risk of coronary heart disease is at half that of a smoker. We went sort of over that briefly. 5 to 10 years, stroke risk is reduced to that of a non-smoker. And then after 15 years, the risk of coronary heart disease is that of someone who never smoked. I think these are important concepts to drill home, that it's never too late to quit. And I think with that, I'll conclude.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elahi. There are several questions. We will save them till the end if you are able to still be with us. But thank you so much for taking the time to go through the health effects of both the nicotine as well as the tobacco products. So next, I would like to introduce the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. The Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids is a nonprofit organization for more than 25 years. They have fought to protect children and save lives from the #1 cause of preventative death, and that is tobacco use. It is the leading advocacy organization working to reduce tobacco use and its deadly consequences in the US and around the world. Tonight, we are honored to have 3 representatives from the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. We have Ms. Amy Barkley. She has been with the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids for more than 21 years, and she is the Director of Federal Field Operations. We also have Mr. Nicolas Suarez, the Program Associate of Youth Advocacy for the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, and Ms. Claudia Rodas, the Director of the Southern Region for the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. Firstly, on behalf of IMANA and ISNA, thank you so much for being a part of the panel tonight. We are greatly appreciative of the expertise that you have to educate our community. Please take it away whenever you're ready.
Well, thank you so much. Good evening to everyone. I want to thank you all for this opportunity to partner, to have the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids partner with y'all's organizations and to share some statistics and information on tobacco usage. We hope that you'll find this data informative and be willing to take action after today's presentation. I'd like to start off by sharing some data on the national toll of tobacco. Note that you can find your specific data to your state on our website. It's at www.tobaccofreekids.org. Much of the data on this slide mirrors some of the information that Dr. Elahi presented in his previous presentation. And as mentioned by Dr. Elahi, over the last 50 plus years, overall smoking rates have been declining in the United States, although we continue to see high numbers of tobacco use, particularly among youth. Why? It's because newer products like electronic cigarettes have started to replace combustible cigarettes as the new nicotine product of choice among youth and young adults. Nationally, 11.3% of high school students reported current e-cigarette use, compared to smoking rates, which are around 4.6%. And current tobacco use, which includes smoking, vaping, or other type of tobacco products among high schooler, is pretty high at 23.6%. For years, big tobacco companies have promoted a richer, more glamorous life through smoking. They marketed tobacco in mass media using attractive women, kid-friendly characters, and celebrity endorsements to heighten tobacco's appeal. From the 1920s to 1950s, tobacco companies used A-list movie stars to endorse certain brand of cigarettes. Later, you had cultural icons like Marlboro Man, which lured men with exaggerated fantasies of manliness and independence. Today, the tobacco industry spends $8.4 billion in marketing their products in 2021, and that equates to about $23 million per day. Tobacco products are advertised and promoted disproportionately to racial and ethnic minority communities. Moreover, tobacco companies have taken advantage of the greater density of convenience stores and gas stations in lower income and minority neighborhoods to heavily market and promote tobacco products. Their marketing strategies have included price discounts, promotional giveaways, heavy product placement, and culturally tailored ad content at retail locations, both indoors and out. Unsurprisingly, these products are growing in popularity because tobacco companies use marketing strategies like celebrity endorsements, social media, and music event sponsorships to appeal to a younger demographic. So what's now driving tobacco use in the United States? Flavored tobacco products are, and they come in a wide variety and are clearly designed to appeal to youth and young adults. Over the last 15 years, we have seen an explosion of flavored tobacco products. And despite the FDA's ban on flavored cigarettes, the overall market for flavored tobacco products has grown. It's important to note that while overall cigarette sales have been declining, the proportion of smokers using menthol cigarettes, which is the flavored tobacco product, has been on the rise. The growing market is no coincidence. The tobacco industry knows that flavored tobacco products appeal primarily to youth and new smokers. In fact, according to the 2021 National Youth Tobacco Survey, 8 out of 10 kids who have used a tobacco product started with a flavored product. The most recent National Youth Tobacco Survey also found that e-cigarettes were the most commonly used tobacco product among middle and high school students. Once again, flavors in tobacco products is playing a major role in youth use of e-cigarettes. The flavors mask the taste of tobacco and make it easier for new users to initiate use. In addition, many youth perceive flavored tobacco products to be less harmful. According to the CDC, there are over 2 million youth using electronic cigarettes today. E-cigarettes use started to grow in popularity around 2014, when products like Juul were introduced onto the market, and then rates skyrocketed in 2018 and 2019. This led to the U.S. Surgeon General declaring e-cigarettes use among youth as an epidemic. E-cigarettes are exposing America's kids to addictive levels of nicotine, with a single Juul pod containing as much nicotine as a pack of cigarettes, and many other brands contain equivalent or even higher nicotine levels. Disposable e-cigarettes look cool and fun, are small and easy to hide. You can buy some of these for less than $5, and they're available in lots of flavors. Some even have a higher nicotine concentration than Juul. While we have seen an explosion of e-cigarettes on the market, we are also seeing flavors in other tobacco products like cigars and cigarillos. Little cigars are available and are cheap, often 2 for 99 cents, and come in a wide array of flavors. While flavored cigarettes, other than menthol, are banned, flavored cigars are not. Hookah is another example of another flavored tobacco product on the rise. We are seeing young adults, especially college-age students, use these products at increased levels. For nearly half a millennia, hookah tobacco was smoked without the candy flavors as it's known for today. That is not true today. Flavored hookah usage among youth adults is on the rise. Despite a widely held perception that hookah smoking is less harmful than the use of other commercial tobacco products, this is not true. In addition to the health risk posed by all combustible tobacco products, hookah smoking carries many other significant health risks. Hookah smoking carries with it many long-term health impacts that mirror those caused by cigarette smoking. For example, long-term hookah use is linked to lung, bladder, oral, gastric, some other cancers, cardiovascular disease, and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Also with cigarettes, hookah use exposes non-users to secondhand smoke. While more research and deeper examination is needed, recent studies have shown that exposing youth and young adults to addictive nicotine and the behavior of smoking hookah may play a role in cigarette initiation. Moreover, hookah users are exposed to up to 1.7 times more nicotine than cigarette smokers due to the length of time in a hookah smoking session. The e-cigarette epidemic has drawn attention to the commercial tobacco industry's decades-long tactic of using flavored products to addict young people to nicotine. Several U.S. states, tribes, and other jurisdictions have reacted by prohibiting the sale of flavored tobacco products. Studies have shown that these measures, when effectively implemented and enforced, can prevent thousands of people, particularly youth, from initiating tobacco use, which can lead to numerous health harms. Today, 5 states and over 330 local jurisdictions have enacted laws that restrict the sale of flavored e-cigarettes. Many of these laws include exemptions to locations that sell or use flavored hookah on premises. We support ending the sale of flavored hookah as it would preserve the culture and tradition of hookah, only without the sweet flavors that appeal to children and young adults. The most active flavor campaigns have been in California, both at the state and local level. The most notable flavor campaign in 2022 is the upcoming California State Ballot Initiative in November. For a complete list of active campaigns, you can visit www.takedowntobacco.org. The Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids state and local team consists of 7 team members working regionally with coalitions and partners to pass tobacco control policies. We offer technical assistance and resources to the coalitions. There are several opportunities to engage at the federal, state, and local level focused on restrictions to flavored tobacco products. To engage in a campaign in your area, again, you can go to www.takedowntobacco.org and search in this interactive map for a campaign nearest to you. I will now turn it over to Amy Barkley, who's with our federal team, to talk about opportunities to engage at the federal level. Amy?
Thanks so much, Claudia. Claudia did an excellent job of laying out the issue and discussing the local and state campaigns that are underway to eliminate the sale of flavored tobacco products. But as you've heard, this is such an enormous problem that we believe it's very important to also take action on the federal level. One very important and recent development in the issue is that it shouldn't read September on the side, but on April 28th, so just about a month ago, the FDA issued proposed rules to prohibit both menthol cigarettes and flavored cigars, including menthol flavored cigars. And you've heard from both Dr. Elahi and Claudia about some of those products. So this was enormously encouraging news. And it really is a historic action that clearly will protect kids from tobacco addiction, but it'll also advance health equity and save lives, especially among Black Americans. As you heard from Claudia, the tobacco industry has a long history of targeting both kids, the Black community, and other marginalized or disparately affected communities. So we believe this policy has the potential to be the best and most powerful action our nation can ever take to drive down the number of kids who start smoking and the number of Americans who are eventually sickened and killed by tobacco use. There is overwhelming scientific evidence to support prohibiting menthol cigarettes. A number of countries have already taken those actions, and we believe it's time for the United States government to take action as well. So very briefly, I'll outline the sort of 2 pillars of activity and talk a little bit about how you might be able to take action. I love how the Imam said that our personal health and the health of our loved ones is in our hands, but it's also in our hands to get the federal government to take action to eliminate all flavored tobacco. So as I mentioned, the FDA did just issue some proposed rules to prohibit menthol cigarettes and flavored cigars. The important thing here is that they actually do it and do it in a timely manner. They have a year to issue a final rule, then that'll be considered for another year, and then it will be implemented. So without a lot of pressure from the public, the media, and elected officials, it's likely to take a long time. So we really are looking for help in influencing the FDA to act decisively and quickly. Again, we feel they really want to. They've done a great thing by announcing their intention, but because of many other priorities, we want to make sure that the public is heard about the importance of FDA acting quickly. On the e-cigarette front, it's being handled a little bit differently at the FDA, and all flavored cigarette manufacturers have to submit an application, and it's then determined if they should be pulled from the market or not allowed to go on the market at all in the first place. So far, the FDA has rejected all applications for products that are anything other than tobacco flavored, but again, public pressure is needed. And then Congress has a role here too, by again, using their leadership to support the FDA, and then also supporting funding for tobacco prevention and cessation programs that would prevent kids from smoking in the first place and help current smokers and tobacco users and e-cigarette users and so forth to quit, and then also expand coverage, particularly under Medicaid, for help in doing this. So we are operating really intensively in about 15 states, and I would love for anyone on the call or listening to this to get in touch with me, and I can talk about where we're working and how we might use your community's help in making this happen. And with that, I'll turn it over to Nicholas to talk about how we're involving youth in all of these activities.
Thanks, Amy. Thank you, Claudia, and thank you to the amazing organizers of this webinar. So my name is Nicolas Suarez. I'm the Youth Program Associate for the Youth Advocacy Program at the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. And my job, as Amy mentioned, is to provide opportunities for youth, especially in this modern day, ways to get involved in this amazing fight of tobacco control and to activate them as youth advocates. So I want to present two opportunities. Number one is the National Youth Ambassador Program. So the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids is seeking dedicated youth advocates who are ready to help create the first tobacco-free generation. Ambassadors are on the front lines elevating the youth voice in local, state, and national efforts to pass policies protecting kids and teens from tobacco and e-cigarettes. And as an ambassador, you're going to be trained as an advocate and leader, preparing you to tackle any issue that affects you and your community. You'll be trained in skills such as leadership, public speaking, media engagement, and how to influence decision makers. I was actually a youth ambassador back when I was younger in high school, and it is an amazing opportunity for any youth who may be watching right now or watching this recording to really activate yourself in the tobacco control space, to really find yourself as an organizer or as an advocate in general. So if you're interested, please feel free to contact me at nsuarez@tobaccofreekids.org. And the second opportunity, and full disclaimer, it is still in development, we're remodernizing it a little bit, is our Takedown Tobacco Training Program. The Takedown Tobacco Training Program is a comprehensive training program created by the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids in partnership with the CVS Health Foundation. This program, geared towards middle and high school students, equips youth with the skills to create change in their communities and to help create the first tobacco and nicotine-free generation. So the two intro courses for the Takedown Tobacco program are Takedown Tobacco 101 and The Rise of Vaping. As Claudia, as Amy, and so many others have mentioned throughout this webinar today, vaping and e-cigarette use is more than prevalent in the tobacco control space today. So Takedown Tobacco 101 is where you'll learn the basics about tobacco, including the dangers of cigarette smoking and other tobacco use, and the proven solutions that can win the fight against tobacco. Not too dissimilar from what you've seen tonight. And The Rise of Vaping is where you'll get all the facts about e-cigarettes, what's in them, the harmful effects they can have, and see what you can do to help create the first tobacco and nicotine-free generation. And the other 4 parts, while we are revamping them, are very crucial to the development of youth as advocates in today's society, where we teach them how to master media engagement, influence decision makers, speak towards the importance of their messaging, and of course, how to plan and activate events within their community, their state, and even nationwide. Another thing I want to bring attention to, of course, is our online toolkit. So we've mentioned it throughout this presentation, but the takedowntobacco.org website is a great tool and resource to use in order to find out more about the information that you've seen today, whether it's about flavors, the health effects of e-cigarettes and cigarettes, or any other tobacco products, or the way the big tobacco industry really uses, whether it's point of sale marketing tactics, disproportionate outreach towards Black and Brown communities, whatever that may look like. We provide that information to you and how to tackle that message so you can convey it to your loved ones, your communities, and more so. One last thing I'd like to highlight is, of course, the advocacy map that was shown before by Claudia. This is a great opportunity for you to really engage within that sphere and see where in your state you can really have an impact on when it comes to tobacco control. And of course, we always have youth-focused resources. We're going to be working with IMANA to make sure these are sent out to you. But there's the FDA's education campaign, CDC Knowing the Risks, a youth guide to e-cigarettes, and of course, youth cessation programs. Seeing how we've seen the trend of youth using e-cigarettes, we always want to provide that opportunity and those resources to really lean off of those products, whether it's through the Truth Initiative, American Lung Association, et cetera, and education programs. Through our own organization, the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, the American Lung Association, and Truth. One cool resource that Truth Initiative has actually implemented is that This Is Quitting Text to Quit program. So if you know, or you yourself or any youth who want to stop using cigarette or tobacco products, youth can text Take Down to 88709. This was launched in January 2019, and This Is Quitting is designed for teens and young adults looking to quit e-cigarettes. It provides them with tailored advice, cognitive and behavioral coping strategies, and social support to help them quit. I think we're all cognizant, organizations like ourselves and the loved ones around them, that at the end of the day, the use of tobacco products is an addiction. And we want to make sure we provide all the support and resources necessary to support you in that process of weaning off those products. Results from a recent clinical trial published by JAMA Internal Medicine, demonstrate the effectiveness of the program and found that This Is Quitting actually increased quit rates among young adult vapers aged 18 to 24 by nearly 40% compared to a control group. And I do believe we have time to show this video. So this is a video on the flavored shisha tobacco and youth smoke screen by the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids.
There's no disputing it. It's impossible to ignore. The use of flavored tobacco products like e-cigarettes or vape pens is skyrocketing, especially amongst the young. We found dozens of videos like this on YouTube.
That's what I'm going to try. Yes, I'm so excited.
The trend is alarming. While teenage vaping was almost non-existent in 2011, it's gone up ever since, with a stunning uptick between 2017 and just last year. E-cigarette use by high school students up 135%. Middle school use is way up too.
Yeah, you see this? I got one. I'm in the club.
The bait? Candy flavored tobacco.
This is me on my first day of vaping.
Late last year, feeling the heat from the public, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration banned all fruit and mint flavored refillable cartridge vapes. But Big Tobacco has found new loopholes. Disposable sweet flavored vapes, and then there's hookah lounges that attract young kids with drinks, music, and candy flavored tobacco.
Smoking is bad no matter what. No matter what color or what name you give it to it. You can call it bubble gum, you can call it teddy bear, but it still is the smoking.
Dr. Mohammed Farousesh, a professor of public health at Cal State University Long Beach, is one of many medical experts talking to state lawmakers about the health impacts of banning all flavored tobacco, including menthol, flavored cigarettes, flavored vapes, and flavored hookah tobacco. So, no surprise, tobacco interests are now looking for a new loophole, a new smoke screen to hook the next generation of customers with a lifetime nicotine addiction. They're claiming that banning flavors would threaten an ancient Middle Eastern culture itself. Now, the audio you're about to hear comes from a hearing before the Los Angeles City Council. hookah lobbyists are pushing for a special escape clause by claiming they're pursuing cultural rituals, not catering to youth.
This has been part of our culture. We're Persian.
Banning hookah would cut off the social life for thousands and thousands of people who don't go to bars or drink alcohol, specifically Muslim Americans.
But several tobacco and public health specialists we talked to, who all have Middle Eastern ancestors, say those cultural arguments are totally bogus.
Hookah use is a youth and young adult cultural product in California 2020.
It's not a Pakistani culture.
It's not a Pakistani culture. My parents are not going to the hookah bars and hookah lounges and cafes.
Public health researcher Isra Ahmed. Her ancestors have told her that hookah lounges in Pakistan were mainly for older men.
It was primarily men who were using this instrument. Never have I heard the mention of tutti frutti or mango or unicorn poop flavored hookah.
Unicorn poop? Well, no joke. On Bay Area hookah lounge menus, we found all kinds of sweet tobacco concoctions that teens might find enticing. Gummy bear, slippery nipple, that's watermelon and papaya, and the SpongeBob, pineapple mint.
It's almost like you're listening to cartoon characters, you know? You watching a cartoon. This is serious poison. They're trying to cover it under bubble gum, under blueberries, under coconut. And those flavors make the kids feel like it's safer, make them feel like it's not as harmful.
But Dr. Farousesh, originally from Iran, says the actual truth is that hookah tobacco, often flavored with chemicals, is actually more harmful. It's heated with chemically flavored coal and then filtered in a water basin.
But now with all the chemicals added, it's extremely harmful to the lungs of the young people who use hookah. Especially when you use hookah, you're basically not taking a puff, but rather than you are inhaling the smoke for a long period of time. Young people try to compete with one another to see who can have the longest breath and create more smoke.
The World Health Organization actually came out with a study recently saying that 1 hour of hookah is equivalent to smoking 100 cigarettes.
UC San Diego med student Isaac Sada's family is Assyrian. He says hookah is not part of the Assyrian culture.
We have other things that define our culture, such as dancing. We have other traditions, such as wearing ethnic clothes, our food, our language, our religion. There's different things that define our culture that is not hookah.
Certainly some Muslims and Middle Easterners frequent California hookah lounges, but look at the photos on Yelp reviews. Young adults from all cultures, the latest generation of Americans getting addicted to nicotine. Not long ago, the tobacco industry hid behind doctors.
More doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette.
Cartoon characters and other American icons to sell their deadly products. Now, in 2020, there should be a new tobacco warning for lawmakers. Beware of a fake hookah culture and candy-flavored e-cigarettes. It's how big tobacco is hooking the next generation. This report was paid for by the Tobacco Free Kid.
It's incredible, right? The impact that these products can have on youth and the communities surrounding them. But I want to thank you again on behalf of the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, Amy Barkley, our Director of Federal Field Operations, Claudia Rodas, our Regional Advocacy Director, Southern Region, and myself, Nicolas Suarez, Program Associate for the Youth Advocacy Program. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity and the platform to speak to this important issue. And I will toss it back to Amber.
Thank you so much, TFK, for your expertise, for highlighting the current policy changes and those that are going into effect in the future all over the nation. I really like the way that you also included and acknowledged that it is an addiction and offer tools and ways to help. So we'll definitely share your contact information with permission with this video for those who would like to contact you for more information. And with that, I will pass it over to Imam Saffet, who will introduce our last but definitely not least, Imam Zaid Shaffer.
Yes, assalamu alaikum again. Greetings of peace. Sorry, I had some problem with my computer, so I'm on my cell phone. We're very blessed to have Imam Zaid Shaffer join us this evening, a longtime friend and brother in the struggle for issues of justice. Truly a blessing to have him here today. And Imam Zaid Shaffer is very well known within the Muslim community, but just general bits and pieces on his bio. He is truly the embodiment of the scholar activist, schooled within the Islamic tradition as well as within the Western tradition, having graduate degrees in political science and Middle Eastern studies, fluency in the Arabic language, having studied with the great traditional Islamic scholars from various parts of the Muslim world. He leaves mosques in his wake whenever he goes from one town to another. We started out in Mesh al-Huda in New Brunswick many years ago, moved to Masjid al-Islam in Connecticut, where he helped to co-found, and after studies abroad, returned to the United States and assumed the position as co-founder and professor at Zaytuna College, first American Islamic college. So we're very blessed in many ways to have Imam Zaid Shaker with us here this evening, and looking forward to hearing from him. One of the things that was raised before was the challenge to the Imam, and I was the Imam on the call at that time, and now we have one of my mentors, Imam Zaid, on the call with us, was that it is a family affair in terms of we have the power to change ourselves. But ISNA has been so blessed to be able to partner with Tobacco Free Kids campaign in the letter writing and signing on to letters that went to the FDA with regard to the announcement prior to the announcement of these rulings. And I think it was such an amazing gathering in terms of signers, both national faith-based organizations, as well as community-based organizations, as well as various leading voices within the health industry and within the healthcare industry and the medical expertise. So I think it was a wonderful coming together. And I think the combination of faith-based communities, community organizers, advocacy groups, and healthcare professionals, as well as the victims of the harms of smoking coming together, was able to sort of push that through. And it's an incredible opportunity, I think, going forward. One of the things I like to mention is in research after research in terms of Pew Research Forum and others, when they talk specifically about Muslim Americans, they come up over and over again with the statistic 65 to 70% of Muslim Americans believe religion is very important to us. Our brother Suarez just mentioned the idea of addiction. Religious communities are very adept at dealing with issues of addiction because part of that has to do with the spiritual healing, not just the physical healing. And so here to listen to one of our, like I said, leading scholars, is Imam Zaid Shaker, as to the issues with regard to the religious framing of this use of tobacco products, which has definitely been part of a history of Muslim communities and other communities around the world. And it was mentioned in the video, connection to cultural practices, like, for example, the practice of hookah. So what does our religion have to say about it, and how can it give us a way out? Imam Zaid Shaker.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Peace and blessings to everyone. It's a great honor. I'm the one who's truly honored to be in the presence of so many wonderful scholars and activists who are working very hard on the issue and have made tremendous strides. Before you leave, Saffet, just how much time do I have? They say don't give a teenager a telephone and don't give an imam a microphone.
I think we have about 10, 15 minutes, inshallah.
Okay, that's fine. I just appreciate that. So in any case, again, I'm tremendously honored to be here. I think it's very important from a faith-based perspective to add the angle of faith to the clinical, public health, political activism, and all the other angles. So those are definitely indispensable. But I think it's also very, very important that the religious community is involved. For example, I can tell you anecdotally, speaking for myself, and I'm sure that Brother Saffet might be able, or any other Muslims who are on this presentation, can testify. I personally, I don't know, this is my personal experience. I know a lot of people, a lot of Muslims, but I can't think off the top of my head of a single Muslim who smokes cigarettes or e-cigarettes or any sort of cigarette. Someone who's practicing their religion. And that's generally, those are the sort of people I'm around. So I'm sure there's a lot of young people who identify as Muslim in hookah bars, but on the other hand, there are a whole lot of Muslims for religious reasons who don't smoke, and others who have given up smoking when they converted, because we believe it's forbidden. And being forbidden, it's sinful to engage in it. And so I think for us, especially particularly for Muslims, to really educate our community, because perhaps a lot of young people, a lot of people who their attachment to Islam might be more cultural than religious, to educate and to set good examples. I think it's extremely important when we say a lot of young people are becoming addicted. I think it helps tremendously if they're raised in homes where no one smokes, as the behavior isn't being modeled. So there might be peer pressure, but that peer pressure isn't being reinforced in the home. In fact, it's being mitigated in the homes. I think it's very important, as was mentioned, to have a family-based approach where behavior abusers become abusers, generally speaking. So if we look at young people who are abusive in one way or another, generally their parents or some adult has been exhibiting this sort of abusive behavior that they themselves are falling into. So the family-based approach is, I believe, is critically important. The faith-based approach, I also believe, is important, and not just for Muslims. I think every faith preaches that the body is a blessing from God, and some might say it's a temple where faith resides in this temple, and it should be kept clean, and it should be pure. We have a saying in Islam: "Verily, God is pure, and only accepts that which is good and pure." And so we strive to keep ourselves pure, and we know the many impurities, carcinogens, tar, nicotine, the various flavors that are chemically produced. When bubble gum isn't something that occurs naturally. There's no organic bubble gum, and neither the type that you chew nor the flavors that are put into these e-cigarettes. These are chemical products produced in laboratories and mass produced in factories. So I think it's imperative for us to really point out the harm. And we have a saying in Islam, actually, many Muslim areas in the traditional realms of the Muslim world, historically, once tobacco was introduced in the 18th century, they held it to be disliked. So there are things that are liked, encouraged, things that are disliked. Most of the scholars said it was disliked. And the reason they said it was disliked is the odor offends those in your vicinity. It makes your teeth dirty. And so one of the practices in Islam is good oral hygiene, symbolized by what we call the siwak, or the tooth stick, which is a sort of branch from an arak tree. And so anything that cleans the mouth, and you'll see a lot of Muslims walking around with this stick, cleaning their mouths constantly before or after prayer. And so that's representative of good oral hygiene. So the scholars, they saw that the tobacco over time made your teeth brown and yellow and stained. And so they said this is something disliked, but they didn't say it was forbidden because they didn't know of the health detriments. So this is the 18th century, 18th, 19th, and then into the 20th century, as the health detriments as it became known that smoking leads to lung cancer, esophagus cancer, mouth cancer, various cancers, that it can lead to other very deadly maladies. Every scholar who was not affected politically, and we'll briefly explain that, said that smoking is haram based on a fundamental principle. Haram meaning forbidden. Smoking is forbidden. Hookah, cigarettes, cigars, it's all forbidden based on a principle: harm is to be removed. Harm is to be removed. And so once the harm was known, the fatwas or verdicts that said smoking is disliked because it offends people, the smoke is odorous. You're not supposed to eat garlic or onions before you go to the mosque because you have bad breath and it offends those in your vicinity. And so they extended that to smoking. And so that's disliked, but not forbidden. People would just have to bear with your bad breath. But it's offensive because that's not very nice or polite or considerate of those in your vicinity. But once the cancers were known, the other health detriments were known, the scholar said it's forbidden, except there were political machinations. For example, the scholars at Al-Azhar University, the most influential and prestigious institution of learning amongst Sunni Muslims, they forbade cigarette smoking, but there was actually an active campaign to change the fatwa because the cigarette companies were paying off members of the government. The warning label, so places like Indonesia, amongst the common people and simple people, smoking was very popular. The government, they put the smoking causes cancer, etc. And a couple other countries. This happened in Thailand, I know for sure. The American government threatened to take Thailand off the list of favorite nation trading partners if they didn't remove the warning label. So the cigarette industries that were losing customers here in the United States because of the awareness that had been cultivated over the years, commercial anti-smoking campaigns, they were making up for that market share overseas. And as a result, they were threatening nations to not put the warning label on the cigarette package. And so there's a lot to be done in that regard. But from my perspective, and speaking from a faith-based perspective, I was at a retreat this past weekend, and I happen to say one thing that's relevant here is that we don't need, and this was the audience, so they were all practicing Muslims, very serious and conscientious. I said, we don't need to ban cocaine. If someone were to bring a kilo of cocaine and to place it on this table in front of us, none of us would go near it. So we just take it and flush it down the toilet. No one's going to use it. And everyone was in agreement. And so I think we can cultivate a consciousness in our community. And certainly everyone isn't going to accept the fatwa, if you will. They're not going to accept the verdict of being forbidden based on the many detrimental aspects of cigarette smoking. But a significant proportion would, when we start using language such as this is sinful behavior because you're engaging in something that's harmful rather. Harm is to be removed. And by ignoring that warning, now you're engaging in sinful behavior. And this is something that could have an impact on your salvation, to have an impact, not to imply that someone who dies owing to smoking is going to hell or something, but it will definitely be something that will be taken into account and held against the person when their deeds are assessed in the next life. And so it's critically important, I think, to add that voice, and certainly not to imagine or be deluded into thinking that just a religious advocacy alone is going to get us over the top. But I think if we add the voice of our religious communities, if we emphasize how harmful cigarette smoking is, and therefore how detrimental it is to a person's spiritual well-being, how detrimental it is to their physical health, something that we're encouraged to support. The 5 great objectives of Islamic law. So we have the rulings of the law, but there's also a legal philosophy. And that legal philosophy is referred to as the great overarching objectives of the religious law. And the first is the preservation of religion itself, because everything else is a function of that. The second is the preservation of life. And therefore, anything that threatens life is to be removed. Anything that threatens life. And so as a result of this objective, murder is forbidden, many things that directly threaten lives. The proliferation of assault rifles amongst civilian populations will be something forbidden. And we've seen how that saves lives in Australia. I digress, but this is a hot topic, right? Australia, they had mass shootings very frequently, not as frequent as we do here in this country, but fairly frequently. And they had one huge one, 20 some odd people were killed at a resort in 1996. And because it was at a resort, the victims came from every province in Australia. And so the conservative provinces, the liberal provinces, they were all appalled and shocked. And within, I think it was 19 days, they banned all assault rifles. And they instituted extremely strict background checks. And they registered every assault rifle. So if you did pass the background checks and you were able to purchase an assault rifle, it was registered. And if your behavior indicated you were no longer to be deemed safe carrying that rifle, it will be confiscated. It will be confiscated, taken away. Since that time, they only had one mass shooting. 1996 until 2019, there were no mass shootings. There was one in 2019 and no more since then. During that time, we probably had 20,000. Since the school in Uvalde, Texas, there have been 17 mass shootings, 4 more dead or wounded since that shooting. And so someone would argue, so as a Muslim, I would argue banning assault rifles would be a religious duty because we're to preserve life. And anyway, so banning cigarettes, banning hookah, banning vaping, banning rather any means of introducing cigarette smoke into the mouth, the lung, would be forbidden and is forbidden once the harm detriments were known. And then there are 3 other: preserving the intellect, so therefore alcohol, intoxicants, etc., forbidden; preserving the family, so fornication, things that would undermine the integrity of the family are forbidden; and preserving private property, and then human dignity or honor. And cigarette smoking would likely fall under preserving honor and dignity, because as we saw in some of those pictures, the people, the video clip rather, were behaving in a very undignified manner. And so these are some of the things that we have to consider. And again, it's very important to emphasize, not as a substitute for what's being done on so many fronts that were so articulately mentioned by the presenters, but to augment, to support, and to strengthen, and possibly to serve as a model for other religious communities that might not have specific legal, philosophical reasons, but certainly moral reasons and other reasons, but not the specific ones that I mentioned. So one thing I forgot that's very, very important, two things that also encouraged the prohibition of cigarettes, of tobacco products rather. One, and this is a part of the legal reasoning in the 20th century that led almost all scholars to forbid it, although cigarette smoking is rampant in many parts of the Muslim world, but not amongst the practicing religious people. None of my teachers, none of the students in the schools I was associated with when I studied in Syria and Egypt, and we're talking about institutions with thousands of people from all over the world. The cultivation of tobacco is one of the most destructive agricultural practices. I don't believe there's any agricultural product that depletes land as thoroughly as tobacco. And this is something that's studied. And so the scholars are saying in many of these countries where tobacco is being cultivated, there are food shortages. And so arable land is being taken out of production to cultivate tobacco. And it depletes the land, and it also makes that land, takes it out of cultivation in terms of food crops. And the second is because there is no benefit, and this is another Islamic leading legal principle and a more ethical principle. Everything we do should have benefit. Our speech, so the Prophet Muhammad mentioned, speak well or remain silent. So if I don't, and that includes telling a joke, cheering people up. So that's good speech in its place. We shouldn't be jokers, but there's someone comes there, so you're really depressed today. Let me tell you this joke I know. What did the dedicated young person who's determined to quit smoking say to the cigarette? He said, I'm going to kick your butt. So there's a time and a place for a corny joke, but we shouldn't be jokers. But there's no benefit in smoking. There's no health benefit. There's no real social benefit, because we know secondhand smoke is probably more damaging than the smoke that's actually being ingested by the smoker himself or herself. So there's no social benefit when we're harming people and jeopardizing their health. And so it's like the scholar said, taking money. So I don't know how much a pack of cigarettes costs. When I was a young person, they were like $1.50 or something. I'm 66 years old. My birthday was 2 days ago. What is it now? I don't follow these matters. What, $10, $8? No one knows. Nicholas, how much does a pack of cigarettes cost?
You know, I can't say I ever bought any.
Yeah, this is Claudia. I think it depends on what state you're in, because
an
packs
average
can cost about $4 or $5, and then plus all the taxes that are added on to it. So,
and so in conclusion, what the scholars say is like taking $5 and just burning it. And so, especially in countries that are developing, and generally people are strapped for cash, it's like literally burning up the little money you do have. And so for all of those reasons, they said it's forbidden. And because it's forbidden to engage in it is sinful behavior. And so I think the important task for us as Muslims is to get that message out in our community, to get that message out and to join forces with other communities politically, educationally, and all the other public health wise to amplify the work that's being done in those various sectors. So may God bless all of you and give you great, great success in all of the wonderful, wonderful work that you're doing. And I will speak with Saffet and our sister here. Everyone's name is visible except yours.
Sister Amber.
Amber. So perhaps we could initiate something that would be effective along those lines. We can have an American Muslim fatwa against consuming tobacco products.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair. I think it was really nice to have you. By the way, I'm Amber. I'm the chair of the IMANA Education Committee. Thank you so much for being with us, Imam Zaid. I know with your busy schedule, but I think it was wonderful having you at the end because it really tied in at the end that really what serves as a great motivation for many Muslims is that religious perspective, that we can hear from the science and hear all of the dangers of it, and we can see the policy changes. But when you bring in religion, especially from those with a Muslim background, is that can really serve as that motivation. I mentioned in the beginning that there was a study done by the Family and Youth Institute and reported that students, Muslim American students, college age students, they rated their religious beliefs to be important to them. And they believed that tobacco was prohibited in Islam, but they still smoked hookah, that they made an exception to that rule. And the medicine that, and the health that Dr. Elahi talked about really ties in with that hookah falls within the same lines that as Allah mentions, that God mentions in chapter 2 of the Quran, that make not your own hands contribute to your own destruction. And as the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, that do not harm yourselves or others, that it's one thing if we want to harm ourselves, but it's another thing that this definitely impacts the society and those around us with secondhand. So thank you so much for your perspective, Imam Zaid. I do have a question for TFK before we end it here. So you guys mentioned that celebrities would endorse cigarettes in the past. We're definitely seeing that come into play with vaping and with hookah. So I really like the way you talked about getting youth involved and taking the initiative. I think that would have an incredible effect on peers. But what would you tell a youth who thinks, well, no one's going to take me seriously, no one's going to listen to me? How would you use that as a driving force that they can actually make change?
I love that question. You know, I think in the world of tobacco control and advocacy in general, I think the best advocacy comes out in the face of adversity, right? And it's important to recognize that in this world of public health, you are not alone. There are millions of others who are suffering from the effects of these tobacco products, and not only themselves, but their loved ones, their communities, those around them. So it's always important to ground yourself within that reality, and then to elevate it using your voice, and to really surround yourself with people who pursue those same ideals, and you can form that community to really advocate for what you truly believe in, because the voice of many is greater than one.
Thank you so much. And as Imam Zaid mentioned in the chat below, as I talked about in that study about Muslim youth kind of making an exception to hookah, that hookah is just as dangerous. It is not considered to be safer or a safe form. It still has many effects as well, if not more so, as mentioned even from the video of one session. So it's something to bear in mind. So before we close, I'd like to pass it off to Imam Saffet for some final words and a closing dua, if you would be able to do so.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amber, and thank you to our wonderful panelists and our partners for the campaign for tobacco-free kids. I thank Imam Zaid for joining us. I just want to throw one quick question. If Imam Zaid's still on, unfortunately, I'm on my phone because I can't see everybody who's on. If the consumption of the tobacco is haram, this is tied, so I guess, to the advocacy question and the presentations on advocacy and public policy. Then what about the purveyors of that, the producers of that? We take action against them?
It would be everything producing it, like we mentioned, to grow it, pick it. I actually used to pick tobacco in my youth. I wasn't Muslim at the time, but in Connecticut, River Valley, they have tobacco farms historically. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. came up from the South and worked in a tobacco field in Simsbury, Connecticut. There were summer jobs for us. Any case, to grow it and to it's a very dirty product. When we finish the day, between the dirt and picking, you will have to scrape the tar off your hands with a popsicle stick. We would use popsicle sticks. So you might have a popsicle for lunch and save the stick and literally scrape the tar off your hands. So to grow it, package it, advertise for it, consume it, all would be forbidden. Every step of the way, it's all forbidden. And to sell
Thank
it
you.
without intention of using it, one of our business ethical principles, if something is forbidden to use, it's forbidden to sell. So from A to Z, it would be forbidden. Imam Saffet.
Thank you on that. And so we pray God that he bless our gathering here today, and that we definitely had beneficial knowledge that was granted to us, ilm and nafia, and the challenge is to act upon that knowledge. And so we're looking forward to, as the recording becomes available, to share that recording widely with within the ISNA network, Islamic Society of North America's network, as well as the IMANA network. I know the Campaign for Tobacco for Kids, our wonderful partners in this webinar, will be able to share that information as well. And we really would work on that campaign that Imam Zaid has challenged us to, not just development of an American fatwa on or religious verdict on the use or the no use of tobacco products and associated products that deliver nicotine, but also to develop that into a public campaign. And I think our brother, about speaking about the youth ambassadors, is something that can help to empower a lot of Muslim students, both at the grade level, who go to Sunday schools, at the elementary and middle school levels, where this is beginning now, and also at the college level, to be empowered to work on issues of public policy. And this is a critical issue of public policy for their future and all our futures. Or, to close it out, is the tobacco campaign at the United Nations World No Tobacco Day theme this year is poison ourselves, poison the planet. And we need to stop poisoning both. God bless you, keep you safe. Just say no. Assalamu alaikum, peace.
Thank you again very much. Have a wonderful night.